17 months. That's how long it took one company to go from $1 billion in annualized revenue to $47 billion. Salesforce needed roughly 2 decades to reach a fraction of that. And in the last 7 days, this same company committed to 2 gigawatts of new chips, shipped a model it says outperforms its own flagship, and watched its chief executive publicly deny that he wants to outlaw the competition. Most people have still never heard the name. Anthropic. Start in 2021 in San Francisco with a group of researchers walking out of OpenAI. Dario Amodei and his sister Daniela take a handful of colleagues with them and register a public benefit corporation, a legal structure that lets a company put a mission above shareholder return. Their product is a model called Claude. Their pitch is strange enough that it should have sunk them. They intend to build some of the most powerful artificial intelligence on Earth while telling everyone, loudly and in writing, that this technology is dangerous. 5 years later, that contradiction isn't a weakness. It's the entire business. You can see the contradiction in how the company behaves. In January, it published a constitution for its own model, a public document describing the values it wants Claude to hold, admitting in the same breath that the model doesn't always live up to them. Days later, it announced Claude had helped NASA's Perseverance rover plan a 400-meter drive across the surface of Mars. In June, California's governor made Claude the first artificial intelligence tool available to every state agency in the state, a safety laboratory, a government vendor, and a spacecraft assistant. Pick a lane. Anthropic hasn't. Now watch the revenue line, because it does not behave like software. December 2024, $1 billion. End of 2025, $9 billion. February, $14 billion. April, $30 billion. May of this year, $47 billion in annualized run rate. One analyst worked out that the company was adding roughly $96 million of annualized revenue every single day. The doubling period sat near 6 weeks. Nothing in the history of enterprise software has a curve that looks like this. Not Zoom in the pandemic, not Amazon Web Services, not Google. And here's the part that gets skipped in most of the coverage. It isn't the chatbot. The engine is a coding agent called Claude Code, which crossed $2.5 billion in run rate revenue on its own and now accounts for more than half of enterprise spending on the company's products. More than 300,000 businesses are customers. 8 of the Fortune 10 are customers. Roughly a third of everything people ask Claude to do is write software. Anthropic didn't win the consumer internet. It won the place where the work actually gets done. So the money arrived. In May, the company closed a $65 billion funding round at a post-money valuation of $965 billion, passing OpenAI for the first time. 4 days later, it filed a confidential draft registration with the Securities and Exchange Commission, opening the door to a listing as early as this autumn. Sit with what that valuation means. On paper, a company that earned its first dollar less than 4 years ago is priced above Walmart, above JP Morgan, above Visa, institutions with a century of earnings behind them. Which brings us to the last 7 days, and the reason this is on your screen. On the 22nd, Advanced Micro Devices agreed to invest up to $5 billion in Anthropic, and Anthropic agreed to deploy up to 2 gigawatts of AMD's Instinct chips starting in the first half of 2027. 1 gigawatt powers as many as 750,000 American homes. 2 days later, a new flagship model, Opus 5, arrived barely 2 months after the model it replaced. 3 days after that, Cognizant, one of the largest technology services companies on Earth, became a top-tier partner and put more than 30,000 of its own people through Claude certification. That isn't a product cycle, that's an industry rearranging itself around a single supplier. And the AMD deal was never really about hardware. NVIDIA's genuine moat was never silicon. It was CUDA, 18 years of software that every framework and every tutorial in machine learning sits on top of. Under this agreement, AMD's engineers and Anthropic's engineers will use Claude itself to accelerate AMD's competing software stack. Read that sentence again. The artificial intelligence is being pointed at the problem of loosening the grip of the company that sells the chips the artificial intelligence runs on. Now stop, because if you only hear the numbers, you'll miss the thing that could break every one of them. Look at where the money comes from. Of that $65 billion round, roughly $15 billion was capital the cloud giants had already committed, including $5 billion from Amazon. As part of Amazon's broader investment, Anthropic committed to spending $100 billion on Amazon's cloud. Analysts have now mapped more than $800 billion of these crisscrossing arrangements across the artificial intelligence supply chain. A chip maker invests in a model company. The model company buys the chips. The chip maker books the revenue. The stock climbs. Everyone inside the loop looks like they're growing. The defenders have an answer, and it isn't a bad one. Compute is genuinely scarce. When you need 2 gigawatts of capacity inside 18 months, you don't simply place an order. You lock in supply by pairing long-term buying commitments with financing. That's how railroads got built. That's how semiconductor fabs got built. But there is one number that can't be argued away. Anthropic has pushed its cash flow positive target out to 2028. It is still, right now, burning billions. And the most scrutinized public offering in modern technology will not be decided by the valuation or the run rate. It will be decided by gross margin, by whether serving all this demand actually makes money. Then there's the model they won't sell you. In April, Anthropic restricted a system called Mythos because internal testing showed it was extraordinarily good at finding holes in software. It went out through an invitation-only program to about a dozen core partners and 40 more organizations, mostly banks, testing their own defenses. In controlled testing, it surfaced thousands of vulnerabilities, many of them still unpatched. Dario Amodei estimated it could take 6 to 12 months to close them. In July, Jamie Dimon, who runs JP Morgan Chase, described giving broad access to that model as handing out ballistic missiles to individuals. Brian Moynihan at Bank of America warned about the sheer pace at which these tools expose weaknesses faster than institutions can repair them. In June, the United States Commerce Department imposed export controls on Anthropic's most capable models. 2 weeks later, after negotiations, it lifted them. That is not a normal week for a software company. That's a defense contractor's week, which is exactly why the last announcement was the tense one. On the 24th of July, 77 organizations, NVIDIA and Microsoft and Meta and Palantir among them, signed a letter warning Washington against restricting open-weight models, the kind anyone can download and run themselves. Anthropic didn't sign. Google and OpenAI eventually did. The accusation came fast, and part of it came from inside the White House. That safety was a story Anthropic was telling to protect its own book. On the 27th, Amodei published a direct answer. Anthropic has never advocated for a ban on open-weights models. Focus instead, he wrote, on keeping advanced chips away from authoritarian governments, on stopping industrial-scale copying of models, and on safety testing every sufficiently capable system, open or closed. So, where does this land for you? Anthropic's own research found that in roughly half of all occupations, at least a quarter of the tasks are already being done with this thing. India is now its second largest market by usage. If you write code, review contracts, underwrite insurance, or draft anything at all for a living, the competitive pressure is already inside your building, whether or not you have ever opened Claude. Cognizant's chief executive said it more plainly than any analyst has managed. Artificial intelligence capability is rising faster than enterprises can absorb it, and that gap is the defining problem of this moment. Here's the honest ending, and it isn't a clean one. Everything you've just heard is true at the same time. The growth is real. The circular money is real. The technology is genuinely useful and genuinely dangerous, and the company selling it is the loudest voice saying so, which is either the most principled position in the industry or the most effective marketing in it, and nobody outside those buildings can tell you which. 17 months, from 1 billion to 47. That number is the whole story, because a curve that steep has only ever ended two ways. Either it's the fastest a company has ever grown into being genuinely essential, or it's the fastest anyone has ever priced in a future that never showed up. We find out when the filing goes public and the margins stop being a secret. So, where do you land on this? Is Anthropic the most important company in the world right now, or the most expensive story ever sold to public markets? Drop it in the comments. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming.